So my background with this practice, I had a friend who had been a monk at Pawak Monastery in Myanmar, maybe about 20 years or more, 25 years ago. And I was very, very struck by the fact this person left a well-paying corporate job to go off and become a monastic for a year. And his sole focus was to learn the jhanas. At that point, I had never heard of the jhanas. I didn't know what that was. And there was, at that point, one book out by Bhante Gunaratana, which I think was a development of his PhD dissertation on jhana practice. And then there was a book, a book by Ayakema, I think it was, that had a little bit of information about it. And that was really it. So this teacher, Paul Oxidau, came to California, and my friend who was organizing the retreat, sent out an invitation. And I had just started a brand new job and had moved to a new area. And so I was quite convinced I wouldn't be able to attend. And this was going to be 8 months in the future. So I wrote back, or I called him and said, I'm not coming. I can't make it. And after I got off the phone, I sat down and I watched myself type a reply email to say I'm coming for 2 months, which was the maximum one could come for the retreat, and hit send. And I literally felt like I'd been possessed. I didn't know what had happened. But by the time the retreat came around 8 months later, my situation had changed dramatically. I had met and gotten married to Tina Rasmussen, who was doing the retreat also, and was now self-employed in such a way that I could do the retreat. So I did the 2-month retreat with Pawak in California, about 40 of us. And Tina and I were the first Americans to do the practice. At that time, there were only a couple of Western monastics who had done jhana practice. So there was a theory in Asia that Westerners couldn't do this practice. And there was a further prejudice saying that women definitely couldn't do this. And I've told people since I've been teaching this practice, my observation is women actually have an easier time with this practice than men do. And I think there's a variety of reasons for that, mostly cultural conditioning. But the fact is, it's quite the opposite. So anyway, I found the practice. I did the full practice with the Sayadaw. He was, at that time, a very direct, very exacting teacher. And so we were required to do the jhanas for 3 hours without interruption in order to pass that jhana and move on to the next jhana. And one does many trips through all these jhanas. So by the end, I don't know what the numbers are, but it's probably 100 hours or something in each jhana. Maybe it's a little less than that, but just an extensive period of time, because you figure to get that 3 hours uninterrupted in the jhana, you normally have to do several attempts. So that would be several hours in addition. And then you do different objects to enter the jhana. So it's, anyway, extensive. The end result of that was not only did I complete it, but also was recognized as what's called a jhana master, when you have the ability to enter and exit at will and do a variety of other things. Then that title is bestowed. So I know the practice well. The jhana practice really was a practice that migrated. It started before the Buddha, before Jesus as well, and probably has been practiced here on this planet for at least 3,000 years. It was being practiced before there was written record. My understanding, it was being practiced before there was even a writing system. So it was passed along orally from master to student. And this practice ended up moving into the back rooms of the different monasteries and into the forests and caves where practitioners were doing deep long-term practice, but it wasn't presented for the public. It wasn't presented to lay people. It was kept as a monastic, whether male or female, but kept as a monastic practice by and large. But the jhana practice migrated out of India and Nepal area. The Buddha took up this practice as a yogic practice when he became a sadhu, a spiritual wanderer, and found it to be impactful enough that not only did he incorporate it into the first stage of Theravada Buddhism, which is called samatha, or purification of mind, but he also practiced it rigorously himself, continuing to practice it each year and even practicing it shortly before he died. So I found all that information very compelling. As Jhana moved to China, it was pronounced Chana practice, and that was eventually shortened to Chan. And Chan is pronounced Zen in Japan. So to my eye and several other teachers, there's an absolute tie-in between jhana practice and Zen practice, that it became the precursor to the Shikantaza practice, if any of you know that practice. And so that's sort of the development of how the practice migrated. And particularly for me, being a teacher in both Soto Zen, Rinzai Zen, and Theravada Buddhism, I can see the interrelationship and the overlap between the traditions and practices. So a lot of my teaching is a blend of the two, the Zen and the Theravadan tradition, with some sort of modern psychology and Western non-dual thrown in. So this is a practice that's been done by Buddhists since the time of the Buddha. So for 2,600 years, it's been practiced. The first written record of jhana practice was in a book called the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. And this was a yogic tradition meditation book. From that book, from different versions, one can glean how to do the practice, but it's not as explicit as it's laid out in Buddhism. So I think it became a little more embedded in that. One of the important adjunct practices to jhana practice, to breath awareness practice, are the heart practices. And particularly, one of the practices I teach is called innate goodness. And I include this in the jhana practice when I teach the jhana practice, because we have to have the heart juiciness, the quality of love needs to be a part of our meditation in jhana practice for it to deepen sufficiently for jhana to arise. And we need the heart because we need that tenderness, we need the sensitivity, and we need a kind of rejuvenation in our practice. If we're just with the breath, which is the main focus for anapanasati or breath awareness meditation, it can get very dry. It can get very much like a factory job, is what I call it, like you're just stamping cans in a factory. It's very laborious. It's very labor intensive, returning awareness again and again to the breath every time it leaves. And with the heart juiciness, that becomes more of an act of love and tenderness rather than this kind of mental begrudging. Okay, here it is. Come back, come back, come back. So we're going to start with practicing innate goodness meditation. We want to have that as part of our repertoire of meditations today. So go ahead and settle yourself into your meditation posture. I'm going to briefly go through posture instructions just as a reminder on the optimal positioning of your body for meditation. And first, you want your knees to be lower than your hips. This supports not only an upright posture, but also lets us include the natural S-curve of the spine. So it really helps to have that upright posture. And in meditation, we want our body to be as relaxed as is possible. So we want to relax, release, open any optional tension we find in the course of our meditation. One of the places that most people hold stress is in their shoulders. So check now, you can rotate your shoulders ever so slightly to ensure they're as relaxed as is possible. Also, our neck is another place of stress. You can move your head ever so slightly, ensuring that your neck is as relaxed as is possible. We also hold tension in our jaw, so you can move your jaw a little to the left and right. Just checking to see if there's any optional tension you can release. This is an eyes closed meditation, as is breath awareness meditation. And you don't need to use your eyes in this practice. It's a common misunderstanding that people will use their eyes to direct their awareness to the breath. We're paying attention to the breath in a specific spot between the nostrils and the upper lip, what we call the Anapana region. And so people will direct their eyes to this location to assist awareness staying with the breath. What happens is, with the eyes in that position, it leads to eye strain, which can lead to both headaches and neck strain. So it's important not to do that. You want your eyes to be looking forward and to be soft and relaxed, and to include them in that way lets you maintain awareness here without introducing or inviting eye strain or headaches. So feel your contact in your seat, your contact with the floor. Feel the support of the building you're in, holding you, protecting you. And if you can sense our Mother Earth beneath, holding all of us in this moment, keeping us safe. Now bring your awareness to the belly. We're focusing on an energy center we call the hara in the Zen tradition. It's about 2 finger widths beneath the navel and 2 or 3 finger widths in from the surface of the skin. You'll notice when you find it because it has a certain quality of grounding, a place we can take a seat. And this is an important seat to take, in that the hara tends to be non-conceptual, so there's usually not too much thinking or thought connected to the hara. And it's a natural grounding spot, so we can rest, rejuvenate in the hara. If you can, breathe into the hara, sensing and taking this important grounded seat. As you make contact with the stability, let yourself relax into it. Soften any intent to do anything and just rest in the hara, one breath at a time. The next in-breath, invite awareness into the chest cavity. This is another energy center, or chakra as it's called in the yogic tradition. And we just want to bring a curiosity into the chest cavity, the heart area. Innate goodness is a goodness that's not related to our performance. Innate goodness is our goodness in just being. We can often recognize this in infants, whether human or animal, babies, puppies, kittens. They can exhibit a goodness without trying. They're not trying to impress us. They're just being. For others, nature itself affords contact with innate goodness. And for some, using idealized spiritual figures from your faith tradition can be another inroads to contact with innate goodness. Contact with innate goodness is often described as having a uplifting, effervescent quality, like a kind of internal optimism or uplift. It can feel like a warm flow, like a warm breeze on a cold day. For others, there's a quality of brightness about innate goodness. They visually can see a brightness to it. And that's communicating the purity, the wholesomeness of innate goodness. So just let your awareness open to innate goodness in this moment. It's not something you generate or have to make. It's not anything you can earn or lose. Being a quality of the source, the absolute, it's always present. As you begin to discern the innate goodness that's here, let awareness relax into the innate goodness, being held and nourished by this effervescent, uplifting goodness. We'll sit here in silence together for a little while before I ring the bell.